All right, welcome to the Society of Wetland Scientists webinar series. We are so glad SWS members and any interested from the public could join us today for this presentation, and we hope everyone is well. My name is Jody Murray Burns, and I am a co-chair of the SWS Webinar Series Planning Committee. As a longtime SWS member and PWS, I am pleased to be today's moderator for the webinar. Today's lecture and topic will be the Corps of Engineers Automated Wetland Determination Data Sheets. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Jacob Berkowitz. Dr. Berkowitz is a senior research soil scientist and the team leader for wetlands research at the U.S. Army Engineer Research and Development Center. He also holds faculty appointments at Louisiana State University and several other universities. He is a certified professional soil scientist and a member of the National Technical Committee for Hydric Soils. Certified by the SWS PCP as a professional wetland scientist, or PWS, he also serves as Society of Wetland Scientists on the editorial board for the journal Wetlands. Dr. Berkowitz has conducted wetland studies in 40 states, resulting in more than 95 peer-reviewed publications and book chapters. His research focuses on ecological assessment and restoration, wetland biogeochemistry, and improving approaches to natural resource management through teaching and public outreach. Welcome, Dr. Berkowitz. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Jody. I appreciate that wonderful introduction, and I'll go ahead and share my slides here, get into the correct mode, and then we'll get started. All right, so hopefully everybody can see that. Thanks everyone for joining.
At the bottom of the Zoom window, make sure you're sharing your screen because you're not currently sharing.
Okay. Try that again. Hopefully that got everybody where they can see things.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Brenna, for helping with the logistics and organizing. Happy to talk to everyone this afternoon, and really excited that we have such a good turnout today. We are just thrilled to be able to share with you what we've been doing with automated wetland delineation data sheets, or what we call the ADS. And so this is a great opportunity to do some outreach with the society and talk a little bit about what we're doing, but also give you a heads up about some things that are coming up in the future. So before I get too far into it, I do want to recognize two individuals that have really been instrumental in the program to develop and roll out these data forms for the public, including Mr. Kyle Gordon, who is the program manager for the Wetlands Regulatory Assistance Program. And none of this would have been possible without the Herculean efforts of Nathan Scholes, who's an outstanding regulator in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Detroit District. And Nathan was really responsible for doing a lot of the actual coding that makes the data sheets work, and is a real expert in troubleshooting the data sheets to make sure that they're up and working for the public. I've included a QR code here on the beginning screen, and you'll see it again towards the end of the presentation. That will take you directly to where you can download the automated data sheets as well as the associated user guide, because we do want to promote these products and get them out there into the hands of the practitioners and others associated with the society who work in wetlands. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation and just kind of give you an overview of what we're going to talk about for the next hour or so. We're going to first touch on some context of why we started working with the automated data sheets and some of the associated challenges, and then what we see as the solutions to some of those challenges. We'll touch on kind of the framework for the automated data sheet system and how they work And then we'll go into touch on some technology transfer activities that we've used associated with these actions, and then go into the specific features of the automated data sheet. So we'll talk about some of the functionality that they have in terms of the site information that we were required to record, as well as some of the summary information about the results. Then dig into some of the specific features of how the automated data sheets deal with hydrology data and how they're linked with the other indicators. Talk some about the vegetation and the capabilities that we've built into the system in regards to identifying hydrophytic vegetation. And then my personal favorite part of the ADS is the soils portion, where because of Nathan's efforts and others, we were able to really make some headway in terms of how we can assist with the identification of hydrosoil indicators. We did some testing with the indicators, and so I will share one or two slides related to how the indicators have been shown to improve accuracy of wetland delineation and the quality of that data. So I will touch on that, as well as make some recommendations for those out there on the line who are using the data sheets or are interested in using the data sheets. Things that I've found helpful as I've used these data sheets in a number of contexts. Then I will touch on a case study where we did a large-scale delineation utilizing the ADS system. And so we can talk about that. And then the current status of this program, as well as some coming attractions. And I will make sure, because we have so many people called in today, we want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. Depending on how much time is left, we may do some live demo of the ADS, but that will be time dependent. So let's go ahead and get started. So the reason that the ADS, in my opinion, is such a powerful tool is that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers handles so many wetland delineation permit actions per year. It fluctuates a little bit depending on what's going on with the economy, as many of you know, but in general, the numbers that I've seen suggest that the Corps of Engineers handles about 7,000 or 70,000 wetland delineation actions every year. So anything that we can do to improve the efficiency and accuracy, even in a small way, of those 70,000 actions can have a big impact on the public and the wetlands program nationally. And so that's why we're so excited about the ADS and what we've accomplished to date, and what we hope to accomplish in the future. So the office that I work for at the Engineer Research and Development Center, we've been responsible for developing many of the technical procedures to conduct wetland analysis since back in the 1980s, including the development of the 1987 Corps of Engineers Wetland Delineation Manual. And it really has a big impact in terms of what we do. Of all the different types of wetlands research that we do, anything that related to wetland delineation just has a big impact because of the number of wetland delineations that are happening. And really, because that number is so large, when we talk about wetlands and wetland delineation, it really is where the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers meets the American public, because there's so many actions that are occurring across all the regions of the nation. There's still some challenges that we recognize with wetland delineation. They require the collection of a lot of technical data related to plants, hydrology, and soils. Most practitioners, maybe specialize in soil science, but not in plants, as is the case with me, or have a strong background in hydrology. But doing wetland delineations requires that we have a strong understanding of all three of those factors. And so because of that, wetland delineations can be onerous. They can be time-consuming. And, even in our own work, we found that the manual calculations associated with wetland delineations can be an issue. And also interpreting that data to get permits submitted to the Corps of Engineers. And so when we have this inefficiency and potential for inaccurate data submission, that can just delay the process, and nobody wants that. We all want to see the permitting process go as quickly and smoothly as possible. And then from the DoD side of things, because we do wear a hat within the Department of Defense, improving resources in the way we do wetland delineations can also help us to accelerate how we execute our civil works and military projects. So the solution to some of those challenges was that we entered into this collaboration with Nathan Schultz and the Detroit District to try and develop an automated data sheet system. We got funding from the Wetlands Regulatory Assistance Program to do this. Almost 10 years ago, we started down this pathway. And so we developed the data sheets for every region of the country and every use-based district to use. We did some testing with those data sheets internally for a number of years, and then worked through the very onerous process of getting the data sheets approved for public release, which we were able to do. Some of the benefits of the data forms is that they prompt users to enter the correct data, and they put it in a nice clean format that's much easier to review than what we've had in the past. It automates many of the calculations for the vegetation, hydrology, and soil indicators. And at least in my own use and from what I've heard from the private sector is that this really has helped to increase the efficiency of data collection related to wetland delineation. And for my group in particular, it's really been a game changer and an accelerator for the way that we execute our wetland delineation projects. And I think the private sector is having a similar experience with this tool. So it's also been shown to increase technical accuracy, and that has the capacity to reduce permit review time. And one of the things that I do like about this platform is that it packages a relatively complex set of codes and technologies into a user-friendly basis because it is in Microsoft Excel format. And I think all of us are familiar and use Microsoft Excel on a daily, if not near daily basis. And because of this, the automated data sheet addresses multiple of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers R&D priorities, which include, looking for opportunities to revolutionize and accelerate decision-making, support resilient communities, ensure environmental sustainability and resilience, and mitigate the climate change. So the ADS framework really is born out of the development of the 10 regional supplements that we put together between 2006 and 2010, where we updated our wetland delineation procedures as well as updated the wetland delineation data forms. And in general, the regionalization process resulted in the expansion of the number of indicators of hydric soils, hydrophytic vegetation, in particular wetland hydrology within each of the regions of the country. And so we developed these automated data forms to increase the efficiency of that wetland delineation process under the regionalization umbrella. And when we went into this, we really wanted to develop a tool that anybody could use with software that was on their existing computers. And so it was determined that we would attempt to do this with Microsoft Excel, which we ultimately were able to achieve. And importantly, the data forms have the same format and a near identical layout to the hard copy paper forms. And so people are familiar with where everything is. And when we transfer the forms into some sort of report format, we have that consistency across all the regional supplements. So we've been really trying to beat the bushes and get the information out about these automated data forms. So we've done a lot of outreach stuff. We published a user guide a few years ago to help people use the forms. We've done some press releases and all the social media stuff, and we've also had the opportunity to do some radio interviews and other presentations about this. And so I see this current engagement here with the society as the next step in that process, and one that we look forward to continuing in the future. So without any more delays, let's go ahead and get started and look at what's in these data forms, how they work. So there is a user guide that's available. I strongly encourage people who are interested in the data forms to go download the user guide and read it. It's relatively short and has a lot of good information there. But the user guide stipulates kind of the coding of what you'll see when you work with the data form, including the presence of an X, which is an affirmative response to yes or no questions. The data form will prompt users with question marks if there's indicators that may be present but require more analysis or more consideration. In the soils portion, we built in the capability to combine different soil layers to meet soil indicators, and those are denoted with a question mark C, the C standing for combination. Anywhere on the data form that you see a red triangle, that means that there's some embedded text there, and if you scroll over that cell, that text will be shown, and so you can read the text and then respond. Yellow areas are areas that are required to be filled out for the ADS to work properly. And then red areas indicate that something in the formatting is wrong, and there'll typically be a prompt to prompt the user to fix that formatting issue. So that's just kind of some of the things you'll see when you use the data form. We also included a disclaimer in there, which essentially states that it's the responsibility of the users to verify the accuracy of the data that they're submitting as part of their permit process. And I'd just like to highlight that, in my opinion, the automated data sheets are a tool, and they're not designed to be or intended to be or are a replacement for a strong wetland ecology fundamentals. So we still have to be thinking about what we're seeing out in the field and communicating that through data collection and analysis as we work on these permit practices. I think the ADS is very valuable to help us get there and help us get there more efficiently, but it's not a silver bullet for all wetland delineation situations by any measure. There are three different ways that we enter data into the ADS. There's the selection or deselection of the X's to answer yes or no questions. There is selection from predetermined drop-down lists and menus where we've entered stuff in there. And then, of course, there's manual data entry where we're actually typing data in. And in particular, with the vegetation species, there are some searchable tools to help autofill to increase accuracy and efficiency when working with the vegetation data. So if you look at the front matter, the site information and summary information that's on the top of the data form, you'll notice when you open the forms that there are several fields that are highlighted in yellow. And we need you to go in and select the appropriate state in the appropriate land resource region or major land resource area in order for the forms to work properly. The reason for that is when you select the appropriate, the land resource region that you're working in the background, the data form will pull down the appropriate list of soil indicators and the appropriate vegetation plant list that applies to that region, as well as the associated indicator statuses for the wetland plant determinations. And then note that all three of the summary factors are listed as no when we first open the forms. When we look at the hydrology, we'll dig into some of the details about what is automated within the hydrology section. But first, to point out, again, we have these red triangles on the corner of the cells, and as you scroll over them, you get the full description of the indicator directly from the regional supplement. And so it's a very quick and easy way to read and see if you've met an indicator without having to flip through the book. Several of the hydrology indicators are linked with data from the soils and vegetation pages, as well as the field observation section down here in the bottom left. Lost my slide. Hopefully everybody can still see that.
Yes, you're back.
Thank you. So as we enter field observations, for example, the presence of a high water table, if that occurs within 12 inches of the surface, then it will automatically select the hydrology indicator in the box there above. So here's a list of all the hydrology indicators that have some automated features or a crosswalk with the vegetation and soil data. I'll just touch on a few of them. As I mentioned, the top three there, surface water, high water table, and saturation, are linked to those field observations, as well as for criteria A3 saturation. It also reaches back to the soils page to check the restrictive layer data entry there. In the regions that have it on their data form, the sparsely vegetated concave surface indicator is linked with the amount of bare ground in the herb stratum. Places like the arid west that have the biotic crust indicator B12 are also linked with that vegetation page. The hydrogen sulfide odor indicator C1 is also an indicator of hydrosoils. And so those two are linked up, that if you select it on the hydrology page, it will populate in the soils page and vice versa. Dry season water table is again linked with that field observation section. And then several of the others, I won't go into the details, that are linked with the soil section, but I will like to note that there on the bottom line, the fact neutral test indicator for hydrology is linked with the vegetation section. And that's one of the omissions that we've seen time and time again with data submitted, is that based on the vegetation data, the fact neutral test was met, but folks weren't always checking that indicator in the hydrology section. So we've been able to fix that. The vegetation, it's really incredible what Nathan has been able to do with combining the National Wetland Plant List and the USDA Plants Database, in particular related to the synonymy. If you look at the National Wetland Plant List, it's about 8,000 or so plants on the list. But if you look at all the various names and synonyms associated with those plants, you get to over 30,000 plants pretty quick. So developing that into a easy to use and readily available searchable database list was quite an achievement, and all of that it was on Nathan's shoulders. And so the form allows you to input species by their scientific name, by their common name, or using one of the approved synonyms. And so there's different ways to enter the data, which is very helpful. As you're typing, it will autocomplete the species name, which is excellent for people like me that are terrible at spelling plant names. So that's been a real winner with me. The indicator statuses obviously are generated automatically depending on your region, land resource region. And then the form automatically calculates all of the vegetation indicator tests to include the 50-20 rule, the dominance test, and the prevalence index. Just like the regional supplements, both 4 and 5 vegetation strata pages are available in the regions that have that option. And then as you're filling up the vegetation data form, if you reach the bottom and there's no room to insert an additional species, a new form will appear and you can just continue listing your species on that new form, and it all gets rolled up into the same calculation. So just to look at some of the drop-down menus and the autofill here, when you start typing Quercus bicolor, then it pulls it up and makes it very easy to do it. And again, my spelling with the plants is terrible, so that's easy to do. You'll notice that all the plants are listed by scientific name as well as by their common name. And so if you don't know the scientific name, if you tap the space bar and then start typing the common name, then you can fill out the form with the common name, and then you just go in with the drop-down menu and select the scientific name in order to generate the indicator status. So here's the form that's been filled out for the tree strata, and you can see the form automatically identifies what the dominant species are, and then does the calculations to determine the dominance test, the prevalence index, et cetera. And along with that, it will update both the hydrophytic vegetation indicators that are met, as well as the summary of findings on the first page of the data forms. So quite a bit of functionality here with the vegetation, and really just the marrying of the National Wetland Plant List and the USDA Plants Database to get the synonyms done has been a huge improvement. And so to demonstrate that, I looked at there are many synonyms for this plant, the Chenoplectus. It's had changes in genus over the years. It's had changes in specific epithet a couple times. And so I did check the automated data form as I was preparing these slides. And so all 6 of these synonyms for soft stem club rush can be entered into the form, and it'll get you to the correct indicator status. So as plant names change over time, we hope that we can maintain this level of functionality because they do seem to be changing a lot of the plant names quite a bit recently. For the soils portion, the data form makes sure that you have the correct format when entering the depths and the soil colors. So for example, you have to be sequential with your depths. There can't be any gaps, and there can't be overlap between the depths of the various layers. The soils has capability to identify and automate most of the hydric soil indicators. There are several that have some limited automation, which I'll touch on in just a moment. But we've also included convenient drop-down menus for most of the soil inputs. So you type in the colors and the percentages, and then all of the other information related to the textures and the redox concentrations or depletions and locations are done through drop-down menus. And then it automatically calculates the contrast for those redox features and places it into the remarks section. So here's the data form that starts at positive 2 inches. And so it'll flag that with a red background and ask you to retry because it needs to be 0 to 2 inches for the forms to work properly. So that is one flag that we'll see. The other is related to the format of the Munsell color information. We're required to have, the hues as one continuous string of letters and numbers, like KNYR with no spaces in between. And then it does require you to insert the chroma and the value in the chroma as a fraction, as is shown on the screen here. And even though it's in this incorrect color pop-up block, we still do get quite a bit of questions about how to enter the colors on the GLAY pages. So in particular on GLAY page 1, you'll note that the hues are on the bottom of that page, the values going up the y-axis, and that 2.5 in hue there in the bottom left corner, that actually the N stands for neutral, which by definition has a chroma of 0. And so the way we enter that one is by N4 dash and then just a blank. So you have to leave that one blank to get it to work. So that's just a little something that we've noticed people continue to struggle a little bit with the GLAY pages. And also just to point out, you can't enter values or chromas between chips, although colors do occur between the multiple chips. So you can have a chroma of 2.5. So that's just something to note. If you're trying to use the forms, you either need to turn the page and try and land on a whole number for that chroma value, or you won't be able to use the forms for that purpose. The soil textures are all listed in these drop-down menus, so very quick and easy to get that information in there, as well as for the redox feature types and locations. And then as you can see in the remarks here, it automatically calculates the contrast between the matrix colors and the redox features. So when you've met one of the hydric soil indicators, you'll see an X appear in the summary box below the data, where there's a possible hydric soil indicator. They will be marked with a question mark, and if you meet that indicator, you can just double click it to convert the question mark to an X. All the problematic indicators, if the technical criteria are met, they're populated with a question mark because the form doesn't know if you're in a problematic soil situation or not. Just as I demonstrated with the hydrology indicators, you can scroll over the indicators and it will provide the full written description. And then as with the other pieces, it updates the summary information. So a good example, I think the indicator F8 redox depressions I found to be probably the most underutilized hydric soil indicator across the country. And so if you meet the technical criteria, which is having a layer at least 2 inches thick within the upper 6 inches that contains at least 5% redox, it will populate it with a question mark. Obviously, the form doesn't know if you're in a closed depression or not. So that's to prompt the user to make that determination. And then again, the summary of findings is updated on the front page. So we were able to crack the nut on some of the commonly combined hydric soil indicators. These are indicators that if you meet all of the technical criteria except the required thickness, the indicators can be combined to meet one or more of them. And so we're able to do that with the most commonly combined indicators to include sandy redox, dark surface, loamy mucky mineral, the depleted matrix, redox dark surface, and the loamy mucky mineral. And so that I think was a real win for us. It's certainly been a challenge to get people to understand how we combine indicators, and so I think the forum really helpful to move that along. And so if you have in this example, you have 2 layers. You have a dark layer that contains redox and a depleted layer that would meet the requirements of depleted matrix. The redox dark surface indicator F6 requires 4 inches of thickness. The depleted matrix in this part of the soil profile requires 2 inches. So they've met all the criteria, but neither of them is thick enough on its own. So combining them together, you would meet both of those indicators as indicated, as shown by the question mark C there in the middle of the page. Of all the hydric soil indicators that we were able to automate, there are several listed here that have some limited automation. Obviously, the data forms don't smell the hydrogen sulfide odor, so that's one that has no automation. The organic bodies indicator is a difficult one to try and capture on the data form, so we decided not to include that one, as well as several of the others that you see listed here. The reduced verdict requires alpha-alpha dipyridine, and the data form doesn't understand if you've had a positive reaction to that, et cetera. So in terms of what we've seen with the accuracy and how the forms can help to improve accuracy, we did look at that. We looked at 9 of the regional supplement regions, and from another effort, I had exactly 270 wetland delineation forms that were completed across the country in a wide variety of wetland types, landscape settings, et cetera. And so we wanted to use those to look at how the data forms had the potential to improve the accuracy of those forms. And so we evaluated those 270 forms using the ADS to see what mistakes we were seeing more commonly, and most importantly, would the ADS help alleviate some of those errors? So if you look at the hydrology section, 7% of the forms had some sort of omission based on the user input. Most commonly, as I mentioned earlier, we had folks that met the fact neutral test based on the vegetation data, but they didn't select the fact neutral test. So the data form takes care of that for us. There were several others where they, for example, had identified the hydrogen sulfide odor on the soils portion, but failed to do so in the hydrology portion, et cetera. The vegetation section had probably the highest error rate, where almost a third of the forms exhibited some sort of omission that we could identify based on what had been submitted. Most commonly, well, I should say most commonly, but commonly, it was a misapplication of the 50-20 rule to identify dominant species. So over 10% had an issue with that. The ADS takes care of that issue, as well as we did have quite a number of forms where the incorrect wetland plant indicator rating had been identified. And so because that's automated under the new system, we're able to clean up all those issues. And then the soil section did have some omissions. Most commonly, we had soil indicators that were met, but not selected. And then in a few other cases, we had where they had selected hydric soil indicators that were not met based on the data provided. And as I mentioned, the data forms were able to correct all of these issues across those 270 delineation forms. So a couple recommendations. It's really important, and this is discussed in the user guide. It's really important to maintain a clean copy of the form. And every time you want to use the form, open that clean copy, rename it, and then save it under a different name each time you work with the ADS. And the reason for that is because there are a number of scripts and macros that are hidden on top of some of the cells. And so if you're working with an old form or trying to reuse a form, I know I've experienced this myself where I will inadvertently have cleared or deleted or altered some of those hidden macros and scripts. And so I've really tried to get into the habit of maintaining a clean copy of each one of the regional forms and making sure that I'm going back to that clean copy every time I work with the ADS. It's essential that you select the correct land resource region and major land resource area for the form to work properly. Otherwise, it will not select the correct plant and soil indicators as well as the indicator statuses. You need to be careful to select your preferred vegetation strata. So if you want to use the 4 strata form, then you need to click on the radio button for that one. Or if you prefer the 5 strata form, that one is available where they have in regions that have both. But you need to be careful to select that. Otherwise, you'll be entering data and it won't be translating into the summary page. Again, just try not to delete the background information. If you do delete, go back to your clean form. And just keep in mind that there are soil indicators that need to be checked that aren't automated as a result of the limitations of the form. And then if you have issues, I really encourage folks to look into the user guide and see if they can address the issues If there are continuing issues, we do have a email box set up that I'll share on the last slide of this presentation, where you can send issues and we can try and track down any bugs that folks find with the forms. So as we're kind of getting toward the end of the presentation here, I did want to include just very briefly some information about a case study where we used the forms in a large-scale wetland delineation context that we worked on, and they really increased our efficiency and helped us get the field data collection portion and the analysis portion done much more efficiently. This was a partnership between our group and the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi, who wanted planning level wetland delineation for all of their tribal holdings. So once we added up all the parcels, we ended up with about 6,500 acres spread across southern Michigan and northern Indiana. So it's a big area with a lot of different parcels, and so tackling that level of delineation is certainly a challenge for any of us. And luckily, we had the ADS that we could take out to the field with us and do this. So we've used the ADS on a variety of platforms. Most commonly, we have some Dell Toughbooks, and now we're using Trimble tablets where we've been able to load the software and use it. And so over the course of that project, we completed about 326 individual wetland data sheets as part of that effort. So we could do it all while we're in the field there. We could check, make sure the indicators are getting approved, and then we save a lot of time on the back end in terms of data entry and analysis. The data forms are really easy to export, and so when we were preparing the report for that group, the wetland delineation report, we were able to export everything and put it in an appendix for them to have, so they have all the data. And so we use the data while we're in the field to help us, especially with the Trimble tablets, to generate mapping tools and kind of get an idea of where the wetland boundaries are in real time. And then the forms also helped us to identify opportunities for the tribe to consider restoration and management options across their properties because we had information in an efficient package. And I would like to point out that delineation effort was funded by the Corps of Engineers Planning Assistance to States program, which for those on the line who are interested has a really excellent way for us to partner with tribal groups to get this kind of work done. So the results of that effort is that we identified over 2,000 acres of wetlands across all the properties, including 200 acres that were previously hadn't been identified, didn't show up in the NWI or other resources. So we did increase the acreage of wetlands there and found some really cool wetlands that the tribe's pretty excited about managing. So the ADS certainly expedited this process and improved the product. What we found executing this was that a 3-person team worked really well, where you have somebody doing soils work, somebody working on the vegetation, and then you have a tablet operator, and then we kind of collectively worked on the hydrology indicators as we went along. But 3-person team with 1 person running the ADS, while the other 2 are reporting the data out in real time was really efficient, easy to do. And then I think this case study kind of highlights the opportunities in the future to integrate, the ADS with other platforms to improve our capabilities with mapping and even wetland assessment tools, really take those to the next level. Some of the images you can see on the screen are just kind of some of that land cover mapping that we did and some field sites, and then one of the parcels delineation results with the sampling points denoted with the yellow stars there. So the current status of the ADS program here, it was released to the public in April of 2022. Really difficult to get these types of forms released for public consumption, but thanks to Kyle's efforts and many others, we were able to really stick to it and get this tool out there for the public. So I'm really excited about that. It's now the official form for wetland determination data. As I mentioned, available in Excel. There is also a non-automated PDF if anybody wants to go that route. The ADS includes the latest plant species indicator statuses from the plant list, version 3.5, which was updated in 2020. It's also been updated for the most recent round of hydric soil indicator booklet, which is currently in version 8.2. And so we will be continuing to update both the plant list and the soils information to the forums moving forward as those changes are needed. And so then there's a link here where you can get the ADS and the user guide, which again, I'll share the QR code for folks that don't want to try and write all that down. I'd like to just kind of conclude this PowerPoint portion with a couple coming attractions. Some of the stuff that we're working on now is, of course, everybody who's used the ADS and likes it, the next question is, hey, this is great, but when can I do it on my mobile phone? So we're working on that to see if we can, we do have a beta testing version where we're working on kind of mobile devices to try and further simplify and accelerate this process. And we're working with Esri's app, Survey123, to get some of this stuff done, to see if we can import location information and other things. So the current status is that we are working on mobile device. We are working on some other tools. All that is currently in beta testing with Corps of Engineers staff. And we're investigating options once we get the thing finalized as to how and if we're going to be allowed to release that to the public. So there's just an example of importing the data from the Survey123. And before we go to Q&A, I do want to just take a minute and highlight the fact that registration is now open for the SWS annual meeting. The crew that is organizing this year is doing an outstanding job. So we're going to be out in Spokane, Washington. So I encourage everyone to go online today and go ahead and sign up for the meeting. And while you're there, we're going to be doing a workshop at that meeting at the conference the day before the conference starts about recent advances in wetland delineation. We're going to be touching on some specific tools and techniques and new technologies that people are using in the field and that we've made some progress with on the research front. And so we're excited to have that half-day classroom, half-day field day, field session workshop in concurrence with the meeting there, where we're going to talk about some of the new tools. In particular, we'll talk about iris devices, alfalfa dipyridal test strips. We will go into more depth about the ADS at that workshop. We'll talk about the new antecedent precipitation tool that's been rolled out to look at rainfall normality patterns. And then we've also been doing some work looking at ways to improve functional assessment methodologies and putting together some guidance and recommendations for that. So please do sign up for the meeting and sign up for our workshop. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me about that. And here is contact information for me, the link to download the ADS and the user guide, social media, my team's social media feeds, if anybody's interested in that. And then at the bottom is that automated data sheet email box. If you have specific inquiries about the ADS or identify bugs that we can try and track down, I encourage you to take a look at that. So with that, we've got just about 15 minutes left. I was considering doing a live demo, but I think just given the number of people that we have on the line, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Jody, and see if we can do a little Q&A. And then if we run out of questions, then we can always pull up the ADS and do that demo. Over.
Thank you, Jacob. That was great. It's very useful. We've got a lot of questions. Some of them were answered further into the presentation, so we'll try to sort through those. I did want to let everyone know a common question about getting a PDF of this presentation. The recording of the session is shared on the Society of Wetland Scientists YouTube channel. And within the description on YouTube, there will be a URL link to the PDF. So you just need to go to YouTube to find the PDF within the Society of Wetland Scientists YouTube channel. And I also wanted to note, those of you monitoring the chat boxes and maybe some of the Q&A, Jacob has a couple of his cohorts who helped develop this technology, Nathan Schultz and Kyle Gordon, answering questions. We've got quite a few. Right now we're at 44 questions. So let's start from the top. Okay, and I will try to not repeat the ones that we've already figured out from additional presentations. Okay, this comes from Michael. Is there a solution for a 2-color chroma? For example, 2 to 4 inches at 7.5 YR 4.6, 40%, and 7.5 YR 3.4 at 60%, so modeled, both in the matrix. He currently includes one color in the comment section below. Jacob, do you have a solution for that?
Yes, I would encourage you to record the most abundant color as the matrix color. And I agree that recording the other colors in the remarks section is the way to go. I've often had people ask me, well, what if it's 50% one color and 50% of another? And I'll tell you, Michael, I have seen some 51-49s, but I've never seen a 50-50.
Okay. April asks, is the remarks section fixed in the Midwest form? She says, if you type something in the remarks section, leave, and then come back to type something else, it deletes what you had there before.
I don't know the specific answer to that, but we will make note of that and include that in the list of responses that we get, the list of questions and responses that we get at the conclusion of the meeting.
Okay, thanks. The user guide, this comes from Gordon. The user guide has a publication date of 2017. Is that the current version of the guide? Is that the
Yes,
most
that is
current
the current version of the guide.
Okay, thanks. Allison has a question about how does ADD deal with varying nomenclature with National Wetlands Plant List? She says the Jepson manual in California uses Sambucus mexicana currently, but lists only Sambucus rubra and nigra.
Yeah, so that is one of the big struggles with the plant stuff is dealing with the synonymy. We have made the determination that we're going to use the available synonyms that appear on the National Wetland Plant List website, and that all those will be included. And those synonyms are linked with the USDA plants database. But we recognize that synonymy with the plants is going to continue to be a struggle, and we're doing everything we can to try and keep on top of that. But there will be instances where there are differences in genus and specific epithets, and we do recognize that that is a continual challenge.
Another person is wondering about using the ADS through a mobile application through iOS. I think you've already answered that, but could you repeat that again just so everyone catches that?
Yeah, so we have developed we've developed a mobile version of this that is functioning on an app. We're beta testing it now internally, so regulators in the Corps are using that to make sure it's working properly. And at the same time, we're exploring options of, if or how we can roll that out to the public. That's certainly our goal, is to get it out there for folks to use. But the path to get there isn't exactly a straightforward path, and we're not exactly sure what the timeline for that is going to be. So suffice to say, we're working on it, and our goal is certainly to get that mobile app tool out to the public.
Okay. I think you might have answered this in the later portion. Can you describe the Glade soil color input? What's the solution for getting the Glade 1 and Glade 2 onto the data form?
Yeah, so the Glade 1 and Glade 2 are not actually hues. On the Glade pages, the hues are listed on the bottom of those Glade pages, where the chromas are listed on the other soil color pages. So if you look at the adjoining side opposite of the color chip, the nomenclature designations are provided there in the color book on the other side of the page. Additionally, the user guide discusses how to enter information for the Glade pages, and so I'd point you in that direction to do it. Just would like to make a note again that the chroma for the neutral hue, the one that's listed as in, it has no chroma, so that is just left blank.
All right, thank you. Katie is wondering, does the form update the vegetation when new nationwide plant lists are published? Is that the plan?
Yes. So we did the last update was in 2020, and Nathan Scholes went on and did the updates for that. And we anticipate that as future changes happen with the vegetation indicator statuses, as well as with the hydric soil indicators, that we'll be continuing to update those moving forward.
And those are usually every 2 years, right? The plant list being updated?
I don't think it's been exactly 2 years over time, but we do know that there are going to be changes in the future, and we're do our best to keep up with those as they occur.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Colleen asked, one item that feeds into the form is the woody vine vegetation section. There's a lot of disagreement as to what is considered a woody vine from region to region, even from regulator to regulator. The regional supplements are pretty vague as to what is considered a woody vine. It can make a difference in what is considered a dominant species for the dominance test. Any change there could be some clarification or more detailed guidance on woody vines.
Yeah, so the woody vine strata, there is some differences in the way they're described across the different regions, so that may be part of the confusion. Those changes were, the differences were, made by the various regional panels of experts that helped us develop each regional supplement document. And so I would point you to the regional supplements, which do include a definition of the various strata. Just note that if you move into a different region, there may be some slight differences there. In general, woody vines, one thing that all the supplements do share is there's a height requirement related to woody vines. So woody vines that are, only 6 inches tall, even if it's a vine, are typically included in the herbaceous strata. But when those vines reach a certain height, then they should be moved into that woody vine label. So check the regional supplements and feel free to reach out to me if there's continued confusion on that.
This is a kind of a broader question. I don't know if you want to tackle this, but what does the ADS compare to other apps like BioApp and EcoBot? Do you have any comments you would like to share about the comparison?
Yeah, well, I've seen some of the presentations at the SWS conference and other things about some of these other tools. We actually did some testing of some very early versions of some of the commercial products that are out there. And there are certainly differences. I'll just give my personal opinion is that I think, I haven't seen a tool that has the functionalities, especially with regards to the hydric soil indicators that the ADS has. But that's not to say, Jody, that, one tool is better than another. All right. I think we need all of these tools. And I certainly see opportunities in the future where, the various tools that we're producing can be integrated in with some of these other platforms, which certainly have a sleeker feel to them and, are designed for, a different application, right? A lot of the commercial tools, they roll in other aspects, not just related to wetland delineation, but they're also, doing things like wetland mapping simultaneously. And so I don't think it's a either or question, it's a yes and kind of question.
All right, good. Kimberly asked, the ADS we use in New England doesn't allow for us to insert photos in the comments section for each tab. Is this something that can be fixed?
Did you say photos?
Inserting photos, I guess, into
Okay,
Excel.
Yeah, that may be a limitation associated with Excel. What I would suggest to you is that, once you've got the ADS completed and you've, got the analysis done, most folks are going to export that into another format, typically a PDF. And when you make that transition, I think that may be the opportunity to insert the photos at that time. So the ADS has already done its calculations, and then you're preparing for reporting at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. You could paste it in when it's PDF. All right. Colleen asked, when will the ADS become compatible with the tablets? Which I think you've already answered. We don't know. You're just working on it. As the National Hydric Plant, okay, that one's done. Okay, here's a good one. Has anyone had any issues with your computer blocking the macros of the Excel? How did you solve it? We've tried changing the macro settings and options and in the Trust Center, but that did not resolve the issue. Additionally, the drop-down menus did not show up in any section, and any text type disappears in the vegetation section. This may be related to the macros issue, though.
Yeah, I would suggest that it likely is related to the macro issue. And I can tell you from personal experience, Jody, that some of the security settings I have on my DoD machine here has not liked some of the macros in the past. So we've been able to fix that for our internal usage by looking at the macro settings and getting some approvals with the security settings. So it likely is to do with the macros, and if you're working on in particular a government machine, a lot of times they will have additional security settings associated with that. But if that continues to be an issue, again, I included the web address or the email box for that for the help desk associated with the ADS. And so if you're continuing to have issues with macros, then let us know and we'll see if we can find a fix.
I know sometimes I ended up solving it on my own by Googling the problem, and it was on my end. It wasn't the form at all. It was what my computer was wanting to do. But then there were some strange things where the vegetation that I typed in disappeared, but it would show up when I converted it to a PDF, which was kind of strange. Anyway, I think you addressed this, but let's repeat it about the texture limitation on choices. Can you tell us if you're going to include more detail for texture choices or stick with the general categories?
So the way that the hydric soil indicators work is that we have collapsed them into these, bins, if you will, of loamy, clayey, and sandy, and then the organic textures, as well as some of the mucky modified stuff. So there are no plans to include things like silty clay loam in the drop-down menu. We will be using the textures that have been approved by the National Technical Committee for Hydric Soil, which are the ones that are currently in the drop-down list. Now, if users would like to, record the USDA soil textures, I think that's another good opportunity to use the remarks section if they think that's important information to have in there. But at this time, we're sticking with the National Technical Committee for Hydric Soil recommendations in regards to texture.
Okay. All right, we're going to do one more question, then we're going to go on to our final slides for the presentation. We will be sending these questions to Jacob, and he can get back with contacting you if we don't get to yours. Colleen asked, does the vegetation get reordered from highest to lowest percent cover in each stratum? Is that still needed since the auto calculation is done by the form, even though that's kind of the method description?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of any reordering that happens within the form. It locates the percentages and calculates the 50-20 rule. Although I will, admit that when I do it by hand, all these years that I've been doing it that way, I always had to put them in order from most abundant to least dry. I'd struggle trying to get the 50-20 rule correct.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right. Thank you very much, Jacob, for peppering off our answers. Brenna, if we can move on to our slides. Thank you. We are proud to recognize our SWS webinar series sponsors for 2023, BioWeb, Cattails Environmental, Davey Mitigation, and Ducks Unlimited. You can find their information at the websites listed above. Please visit and like and follow our webinar sponsors to show your appreciation of the webinar content. Our next webinar will be April 20th with co-presenters John Barmore and Royal Gardner, who will be giving us an update on our national policy regarding WOTUS and sharing the details and status of the Supreme Court Sackett case. On May 18th, we will be joined by William Duggins and Tyler Bell of the Westerfelt Company for a presentation about the development of an agricultural wetlands mitigation bank. The April and May webinars of our series are for SWS members only, so join today at sws.org so you don't miss out on these excellent opportunities. Check out our social media channels to learn more and register for future events. And don't forget to complete the survey that will be sent to you after this webinar to receive a certificate of participation and provide feedback on this webinar series. Thanks again to Dr. Berkowitz and to our audience for participating today. Everyone have a wonderful day. Bye.